In a small, quiet neighborhood nestled at the edge of town, life moved at a predictable pace. The streets were lined with neatly trimmed hedges and colorful flower beds that seemed to bloom year-round. Children rode their bikes down the sidewalks while parents chatted over fences, exchanging stories about school projects or weekend plans. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, at least by face, and where people prided themselves on keeping things tidy and orderly. At the heart of this suburban utopia stood Alex, a hard-working graphic designer who had recently purchased their dream home after years of saving. The house wasn't grand or extravagant, but it had charm. Its white picket fence, cobblestone pathway, and cozy front porch made it feel like something out of a storybook. Every Saturday morning, Alex could be found outside tending to the garden, planting new flowers, or trimming back unruly bushes. They loved how peaceful the neighborhood felt, far removed from the chaos of city life. But as idyllic as the setting seemed, there was one person who cast a shadow over the tranquility: Karen. Karen was known throughout the community as the self-appointed enforcer of the Homeowners Association, HOA. She carried herself with an air of authority, always dressed in pressed slacks and blazers, her clipboard perpetually tucked under her arm. To Karen, the HOA rules weren't just guidelines. They were sacred laws meant to preserve the neighborhood's pristine appearance. Karen took her role very seriously. If someone painted their front door a shade of blue not approved by the HOA, they'd receive a strongly worded email within hours. If a mailbox leaned even slightly to one side, Karen would march over and demand immediate repairs. And heaven forbid if anyone dared leave their trash cans out past collection day, Karen would snap photos and send them to the entire HOA board before noon. Despite Karen's notorious reputation, Alex tried to stay on her good side. They figured that as long as they followed the rules, everything would be fine. So when Karen stopped by one sunny afternoon to introduce herself, Alex greeted her warmly, offering a friendly smile. "Welcome to the neighborhood," Karen said stiffly, scanning Alex's property with sharp eyes. "Just remember, we have high standards here. Let me know if you need a copy of the HOA handbook." Alex nodded politely, though inwardly, they couldn't help but feel uneasy. Something about Karen's tone set off alarm bells. Still, Alex resolved to keep their head down and avoid any trouble. After all, moving into this house was supposed to mark a fresh start, a chance to build a happy, stress-free life. For the first few weeks, everything went smoothly. Alex settled into their routine, decorating the house with care and getting to know their neighbors. But then came the wind chime incident. One Saturday morning, inspired by a trip to a local craft fair, Alex decided to hang a delicate wind chime near the front door. It was a simple addition, a touch of whimsy that caught the sunlight and sang softly whenever the breeze blew through. Alex thought it added character to the house, a little detail that made the space feel more like home. It didn't take long for Karen to notice. That same evening, as Alex sat inside enjoying a cup of tea, there was a loud knock at the door. Opening it, they found Karen standing on the porch, arms crossed and lips pursed. Without so much as a greeting, she launched into a tirade. "I hope you realize that noise ordinances are strictly enforced in this community," Karen said, pointing accusingly at the wind chime. "That thing is disturbing the peace." Alex blinked in disbelief. "Disturbing the peace?" they repeated. "It's just a wind chime. You can barely hear it unless you're standing right next to it." Karen wasn't convinced. "Rules are rules," she snapped. "Either you remove it, or I'll have no choice but to report you to the HOA board." Not wanting to cause a scene, Alex reluctantly took down the wind chime later that night. But as they tucked it away in a drawer, a seed of frustration began to grow. This wasn't about maintaining order, it was about control. Karen's obsession with the rules bordered on obsessive, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that she was targeting them specifically. Over the following days, Alex tried to brush off the encounter, telling themselves it was better to let it go. But Karen didn't stop there. Notes started appearing taped to their front door, each one more scathing than the last. "Your car is parked too close to the curb," read one. "The grass on your lawn is uneven," read another. Each message was signed with Karen's name, as if she wanted Alex to know exactly who was behind them. At first, Alex attempted to address Karen's concerns, mowing the lawn more frequently and double-checking the parking job. But no matter what they did, Karen found something else to criticize. It became clear that pleasing her was impossible. Her complaints weren't about enforcing rules, they were personal. One afternoon, Alex confided in a neighbor named Sarah, who lived 2 doors down. Over lemonade on Sarah's porch, Alex vented their frustrations. "I don't understand why she's singling me out," Alex admitted. "I'm doing everything I can to follow the rules." Sarah sighed sympathetically. "You're not the only one she's gone after," she said quietly. "Last summer, she gave my family grief for leaving our Halloween decorations up a week too long. Honestly, I think she thrives on drama." Hearing this didn't make Alex feel any better, but it did confirm their suspicions. Karen wasn't just being nitpicky. She was toxic. Determined to protect themselves from further harassment, Alex decided to install a security camera system around the property. At the time, they told themselves it was purely for peace of mind. Little did they know, those cameras would soon become their greatest ally in exposing Karen's true nature. As the weeks passed, tension between Alex and Karen simmered beneath the surface. What started as minor annoyances escalated into something far more sinister, culminating in an act of vandalism that would change everything for both of them. The wind chime incident marked the beginning of a series of increasingly hostile encounters between Alex and Karen. What started as a minor disagreement quickly spiraled into something much bigger, leaving Alex feeling like they were walking on eggshells every time they stepped outside their home. The once peaceful neighborhood now felt tense, overshadowed by Karen's constant scrutiny and relentless complaints. After reluctantly removing the wind chime, Alex thought the issue would blow over. Surely Karen had better things to do than obsess over trivial details like lawn ornaments or door decorations. But instead of letting it go, Karen seemed emboldened by Alex's compliance. Within days, another note appeared taped to the front door. This time it read, "Your mailbox is leaning slightly to the left. Please fix immediately." Alex stared at the paper in disbelief. The mailbox wasn't even crooked. It stood perfectly upright, just as it had when they first moved in. Frustrated but unwilling to provoke Karen further, Alex grabbed a level from the garage and checked the alignment anyway. To no one's surprise, the mailbox was perfectly straight. Still, Alex adjusted it slightly just to humor her, hoping it would put an end to the nitpicking. But Karen wasn't satisfied. A few days later, another note arrived. "Mailbox still looks uneven. You need to try harder." It wasn't just the notes that grated on Alex's nerves. It was the way Karen delivered them. She didn't knock on the door or leave polite reminders like other neighbors might have done. Instead, she slipped the papers under the mat or stuck them to the glass with tape, ensuring they were impossible to ignore. Each message carried the same tone, cold, accusatory, and dripping with condescension. It was as if Karen took pleasure in finding fault with everything Alex did. One evening, as Alex watered the garden after work, Karen stormed across the street without warning. Her face was flushed, and her arms were crossed tightly over her chest. "Do you realize you're watering your plants at the wrong time?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut through the quiet evening air. Alex froze mid-pour, the hose dangling loosely in their hand. "What do you mean, the wrong time?" they asked cautiously. "The HOA guidelines clearly state that all outdoor watering must be done before 8 a.m. or after 6 p.m., Karen snapped. "It's almost 7:30 right now. That's unacceptable." Alex glanced at their watch, confused. It was barely 7:15, not even close to breaking any rules. "I'm pretty sure I'm within the allowed time frame," they replied calmly, trying to keep their tone light. Karen narrowed her eyes. "Close doesn't count," she shot back. "Rules are rules, and you need to follow them if you want to live here." For a moment, Alex considered arguing. They could point out the exact wording of the HOA handbook, or remind Karen that 7:15 technically fell within the permitted hours. But experience had taught them that reasoning with Karen was futile. She thrived on conflict, feeding off others' discomfort until she got her way. So instead, Alex simply nodded and turned off the hose, avoiding further confrontation. As Karen marched back to her house, Alex exhaled deeply, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness wash over them. Why was she so determined to make their life difficult? Was it really about enforcing the rules, or was there something deeper driving her behavior? Alex couldn't shake the suspicion that Karen's actions weren't motivated by a desire for order, but rather by a need for control, a way to assert dominance over anyone she perceived as different or non-compliant. Determined to avoid further trouble, Alex began going out of their way to appease Karen. They double-checked the HOA handbook for obscure regulations, made sure their car was parked perfectly parallel to the curb, and even trimmed the hedges more frequently than necessary. But no matter how hard they tried, Karen always found something new to criticize. One week it was the color of their welcome mat. Too bright, consider something more neutral. The next, it was the placement of their recycling bins. They should be hidden from view at all times. Each complaint felt like a personal attack, chipping away at Alex's patience and sense of security. What had once been a source of pride, their cozy little house and carefully tended garden, now felt like a battleground. Every glance out the window brought the fear of seeing Karen lurking nearby, clipboard in hand, ready to pounce on the slightest infraction. Desperate for advice, Alex reached out to Sarah again. Over coffee in Sarah's kitchen, they recounted the latest string of grievances, venting their frustration while Sarah listened sympathetically. "She's impossible to please," Alex said finally. "No matter what I do, it's never good." "Enough," Sarah nodded knowingly. "That's Karen for you," she said with a sigh. "She picks a target and won't let up until she's worn them down completely. My husband and I used to joke that we needed hazard pay just to deal with her." Though Sarah's words offered some comfort, they also highlighted the grim reality of living in Karen's orbit. There was no winning with someone like her, only enduring. Still, Alex refused to give up hope. They loved their home and cherished the idea of building a peaceful life there. If that meant playing along with Karen's games for a while, so be it. But deep down, Alex knew this couldn't last forever. Something had to give. Either Karen would grow tired of harassing them, or Alex would find a way to stand up for themselves. Little did they know, the turning point was closer than they imagined, and it would come in a way neither of them could have anticipated. One chilly evening, as Alex returned home after a long day at work, they noticed something strange about the house. At first glance, everything seemed normal. The porch light was on, the flowers swayed gently in the breeze, but something felt off. As they stepped closer, the truth hit them like a punch to the gut. Their living room window had been shattered, shards of glass glittering ominously in the fading light. Heart pounding, Alex rushed inside to assess the damage, unaware that this act of vandalism would expose Karen's true nature and change the dynamics of the entire neighborhood forever. The shattered window was a shock Alex wasn't prepared for. Standing in the doorway, heart racing, they stared at the jagged hole where glass once stood. Tiny shards littered the floor, glinting like icy fragments under the dim light of the living room lamp. A cold draft swept through the space, carrying with it an unsettling sense of violation. It wasn't just property damage, it felt personal, as if someone had deliberately invaded their sanctuary. Alex's mind raced. Had someone broken in? Were they robbed? They quickly scanned the room, checking for any signs of theft or disturbance. The TV was still mounted on the wall, the laptop sat untouched on the coffee table, and nothing appeared to be missing. But then Alex noticed something that sent chills down their spine, a rock lying amidst the broken glass. At first glance, it seemed ordinary enough, but as Alex picked it up cautiously, they saw something tied around it, a piece of paper. Unfolding the note with trembling hands, Alex read the words, scrawled in bold, uneven handwriting. "Follow the rules or face the consequences." The message was short, almost cryptic, but its meaning was crystal clear. Someone was sending a warning, and Alex didn't need long to figure out who might be behind it. Karen. It all clicked into place, the endless nitpicking, the passive-aggressive notes, the constant pressure to conform. This wasn't just about enforcing HOA guidelines anymore. This was intimidation, plain and simple. Karen had crossed a line she couldn't come back from, and Alex knew they couldn't ignore what had happened. But proving her involvement wouldn't be easy. Without evidence, it would be Alex's word against hers, and given Karen's reputation in the neighborhood, people might side with her instead. Determined not to let this slide, Alex decided to revisit the security cameras they had installed a few weeks earlier. At the time, the decision had been purely precautionary, a way to keep an eye on things while they were away. Now those cameras might hold the key to uncovering the truth. With shaking hands, Alex pulled up the footage on their phone, scrolling, back to the hours leading up to the incident. As the video played, Alex watched the familiar sight of their quiet street bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Cars passed by occasionally, and neighbors strolled along the sidewalks going about their evening routines. Everything seemed normal, until a dark figure appeared near the edge of the frame. Clad in a hoodie and jeans, the person moved with purpose, sticking close to the shadows as they approached Alex's house. Though their face was obscured, there was no mistaking the deliberate way they carried themselves, nor the object clutched tightly in their hand. Alex leaned closer, holding their breath as the figure stopped directly beneath the living room window. For a moment they hesitated, glancing around nervously before rearing back and hurling the rock with surprising force. The sound of shattering glass echoed faintly even through the camera's microphone. Then, without waiting to see the aftermath, the figure turned and bolted toward a parked car, disappearing into the night. Though the hood concealed most of their features, Alex recognized the gait instantly. It was unmistakably Karen. The way she held herself, the confident yet hurried stride. It was exactly how she walked during their heated exchanges on the porch. There was no doubt in Alex's mind now. Karen had done this. She had escalated, from harassment to outright destruction, leaving a trail of fear and anger in her wake. Despite the clarity of the footage, Alex felt conflicted. On one hand, they finally had proof of Karen's actions, a smoking gun that could expose her for the bully she truly was. On the other hand, reporting her meant dragging the entire neighborhood into the drama. People like to think of their community as peaceful and harmonious, and airing dirty laundry in public would undoubtedly cause tension. Plus, there was always the risk of retaliation. What if Karen retaliated further, escalating her behavior in response? To make matters worse, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. While Sarah and a few others had expressed sympathy for their situation, many neighbors remained silent, either out of fear or indifference. Some may have even sided with Karen, believing her claims that Alex was somehow disruptive or non-compliant. Going public with the footage could alienate them further, painting Alex as the troublemaker rather than the victim. But staying silent wasn't an option either. Allowing Karen to get away with such blatant aggression would set a dangerous precedent. Not just for Alex, but for everyone else in the neighborhood. If she could target one person without consequence, who would be next? Would others suffer the same fate simply because Karen decided they weren't following her version of the rules closely enough? After hours of deliberation, Alex came to a decision. They would present the evidence to the HOA board members, hoping that seeing the footage for themselves would compel them to take action. It was risky, but it was also necessary. The alternative, letting Karen continue unchecked, was unthinkable. Before taking that step, however, Alex wanted to ensure they had allies. Over the next few days, they reached out discreetly to several neighbors, sharing snippets of the video and explaining what had happened. To their relief, many were appalled by Karen's behavior. Some admitted they'd experienced similar treatment, notes left on their doors, snide comments during meetings, or thinly veiled threats about non-compliance, but had been too afraid to speak up. "I always thought I was imagining things," said Mark, a retired teacher who lived across the street. "But hearing your story makes me realize I'm not alone." Another neighbor, Lisa, nodded in agreement. "She's been bullying us for years," she confessed. "We just never had proof until now." With growing support from their neighbors, Alex began preparing for the upcoming HOA meeting. They knew confronting Karen wouldn't be easy. She was manipulative, cunning, and skilled at twisting situations to suit her narrative. But armed with the video and the backing of their community, Alex felt ready to stand their ground. The day of the meeting arrived, and Alex walked into the community center with a mix of nerves and determination. The room buzzed with quiet conversation as board members and residents gathered, unaware of the bombshell Alex was about to drop. As the meeting progressed, Alex waited patiently for their turn to speak, rehearsing their words silently in their head. When the floor opened for discussion, Alex stepped forward, projecting confidence despite the knot of anxiety in their stomach. "I'd like to address something important," they began, their voice steady. "Recently, my home was vandalized, and I believe I know who is responsible." A murmur rippled through the crowd as Alex connected their laptop to the projector and played the footage. Gasps filled the room as Karen's figure appeared on the screen, unmistakable even in grainy resolution. Her movements were sharp and calculated, her intent undeniable. By the time the video ended, the atmosphere in the room had shifted entirely. What had once been polite indifference turned into collective outrage. Board members exchanged shocked glances, while neighbors whispered amongst themselves. Even those who had previously dismissed Alex's complaints now looked horrified. For the first time, Karen's reign of terror was laid bare for everyone to see, and no one could deny the truth staring them in the face. As the meeting drew to a close, the board announced they would investigate the matter thoroughly and take appropriate action. Alex left the room feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. They had taken the first step toward justice, but the battle was far from over. Still, knowing they weren't alone gave them hope that change was possible, and that maybe, just maybe, the neighborhood could heal from the damage Karen had inflicted. The HOA meeting had ended, but Alex couldn't shake the tension that lingered in the air. While many neighbors expressed support and outrage over Karen's actions, there was still an undercurrent of unease. Some residents whispered among themselves, questioning whether Alex might have somehow provoked Karen, or if the footage could be manipulated. Others avoided eye contact altogether, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of confronting someone as vocal and domineering as Karen. As Alex walked home from the community center, the weight of what they'd started pressed heavily on their shoulders. They knew exposing Karen's behavior was the right thing to do, but it also meant stepping into uncharted territory. For so long, Alex had tried to keep their head down, hoping to avoid conflict. Now, they were at the center of a storm. One that could either lead to justice or spiral out of control. That night, sleep evaded Alex. Every sound outside, the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of a car engine, felt amplified, as though danger lurked just beyond the repaired window pane. Their mind raced with questions. Would Karen retaliate? Could she deny everything and twist the narrative to make herself look like the victim? And how would the rest of the neighborhood react once the full scope of her behavior came to light? By morning, exhaustion clung to Alex like a second skin. Still, they forced themselves out of bed, knowing they needed to stay one step ahead. The security footage was damning, but Alex understood that proving Karen's guilt wouldn't be as simple as pressing play. People like Karen thrived on loopholes and half-truths, and Alex couldn't afford to leave anything to chance. Over the next few days, Alex immersed themselves in gathering additional evidence. They reviewed every frame of the video, slowing it down to capture even the smallest details. One key piece stood out: the license plate of the car Karen fled to after smashing the window. Though partially obscured by shadows, Alex managed to enhance the image using editing software, revealing a clear view of the numbers and letters. It matched the vehicle registered to Karen's address, a fact Alex confirmed through public records. Next, Alex compiled a timeline of their interactions with Karen, documenting every complaint, note, email, and confrontation. They printed screenshots of her accusatory messages, snapped photos of the passive-aggressive notes she'd left taped to their door, and noted dates and times of each incident. The result was a comprehensive dossier that painted a stark picture of escalating harassment culminating in outright vandalism. But preparing for legal action wasn't the only challenge Alex faced. Word of the broken window and the accusations against Karen spread quickly through the neighborhood. While some residents rallied behind Alex, others remained skeptical or downright hostile. During a casual chat at the mailbox, one neighbor, Greg, voiced his doubts. "I don't know," he said, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "It seems kind of extreme, doesn't it? I mean, sure, Karen can be intense sometimes, but breaking a window? That's not really her style." Alex bit back their frustration, knowing arguments wouldn't win Greg over. Instead, they calmly replied, "I get why it might seem hard to believe, but when you see the footage and hear about everything else she's done, it starts to make sense. She's been pushing boundaries for months, testing how far she can go without consequences." Greg shrugged noncommittally, clearly unconvinced. His reaction stung, but Alex reminded themselves that change rarely came without resistance. Not everyone would immediately side with them, and that was okay, as long as enough people recognized the truth. Meanwhile, rumors swirled about Karen's possible motives. Some speculated she acted out of jealousy, pointing to Alex's beautifully maintained garden and cozy home decor as triggers for her ire. Others suggested she saw Alex as a threat to her authority within the HOA, especially since they hadn't backed down during earlier confrontations. Whatever the reason, it was clear that Karen's actions stemmed from something deeper than mere rule enforcement. Then came the knock at the door. It was late afternoon, and Alex wasn't expecting visitors. Opening the door cautiously, they found two police officers standing on the porch. Both wore uniforms crisp with professionalism, their badges glinting in the sunlight. One held a notepad while the other gave a polite smile. "Are you Alex?" the first officer asked, consulting his notes. When Alex nodded, he continued, "We received a report regarding an incident involving vandalism at your residence. Do you mind if we come in?" Heart pounding, Alex stepped aside, ushering them inside. Over the next hour, they recounted the events leading up to the broken window, showing the officers the security footage and explaining how Karen's behavior had escalated over time. To Alex's relief, the officers listened intently, asking detailed questions and taking copious notes. "So based on what you're telling us," the second officer said eventually, "you believe this individual targeted you specifically due to ongoing disputes related to HOA regulations?" "Yes," Alex replied firmly. "She's made it clear that she doesn't approve of how I maintain my property, even though I've done everything I can to comply with the rules. This wasn't random. It was personal." The officers exchanged a glance before nodding. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention," the first officer said. "We'll review the evidence and speak with the suspect. If the investigation confirms your claims, charges will likely be filed." Though the visit left Alex feeling drained, it also reinforced their belief that justice was within reach. The police had taken their complaint seriously, which meant Karen couldn't simply dismiss it as a misunderstanding. For the first time in weeks, Alex allowed themselves a moment of cautious optimism, but the real test was yet to come. As word of the police involvement reached Karen, she predictably went on the defensive. Within hours, Alex received a curt email from her lawyer, a generic statement denying any wrongdoing and accusing Alex of fabricating the entire incident. It was a desperate attempt to deflect blame, but Alex refused to be intimidated. With the support of their neighbors, the backing of the HOA board, and the undeniable evidence captured on camera, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Little did Alex know, the confrontation with Karen would culminate in a dramatic showdown, one that would expose not only her true nature but also the cracks in the foundation of the seemingly perfect neighborhood. The confrontation with Karen didn't happen all at once. It unfolded in stages, each one more intense than the last. After receiving the email from her lawyer, Alex braced themselves for what they knew would be a messy battle. Karen wasn't the type to admit fault or back down quietly. Instead, she dug in her heels, determined to twist the narrative in her favor and discredit Alex's claims. It started subtly. Over the next few days, Alex noticed an increase in whispers around the neighborhood. Some residents avoided making eye contact when they passed by, while others exchanged hushed conversations that stopped abruptly whenever Alex approached. At first, Alex tried to brush it off, telling themselves it was just paranoia. But soon, the signs became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, as Alex was watering their plants, Greg, the same neighbor who had expressed doubts earlier, approached them with a hesitant smile. "Hey, listen," he began awkwardly, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "I don't mean to pry, but, well, some people are saying you might have provoked Karen somehow, like maybe you were deliberately breaking rules just to get under her skin." Alex froze mid-pour, stunned by the accusation. "Are you serious?" they asked, struggling to keep their voice steady. "How could following the HOA guidelines, or trying my best to, be considered provocation?" Greg held up his hands defensively. "I'm not saying I believe it," he clarified quickly. "But you know how gossip spreads. People hear bits and pieces, and before you know it, everyone's got their own version of the story." Though Greg's explanation made sense, it left Alex feeling uneasy. Rumors were powerful tools, especially in a tight-knit community like theirs. If enough people doubted Alex's credibility, it could undermine the entire case against Karen. Determined to set the record straight, Alex decided to hold an informal gathering at their house, a chance to share the evidence directly with their neighbors and answer any lingering questions. The evening of the gathering arrived, and Alex nervously arranged chairs on their front lawn, setting out snacks and drinks in hopes of creating a welcoming atmosphere. As neighbors trickled in, Alex greeted them warmly, offering reassurances that this wasn't about stirring up drama, but rather finding clarity. Once everyone was settled, Alex stood at the center of the group, projecting the security footage onto a portable screen. The video played silently, capturing Karen's unmistakable figure sneaking up to their house, hurling the rock and fleeing into the night. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the truth became undeniable. "This isn't just about me," Alex said, addressing the group earnestly. "It's about standing up for ourselves and protecting our community. We've all felt Karen's pressure at some point. Her constant nitpicking, her threats, her refusal to let anyone live peacefully unless they do exactly what she says. But this," they gestured toward the screen, "this is different. This is harassment taken to an extreme level." The room fell silent as Alex's words sank in. Lisa, the neighbor who had previously shared her own experiences with Karen, spoke up first. "I've been scared to say anything because I didn't want to cause trouble," she admitted softly. "But seeing this makes me realize we can't stay quiet anymore. She's been bullying us for years, and it needs to stop." Her statement sparked a wave of agreement. One by one, neighbors chimed in, recounting their own run-ins with Karen. Sarah revealed how Karen had once demanded she repaint her mailbox because it was too cheerful. Mark confessed that Karen had called him repeatedly to complain about his holiday lights being gaudy and insisted he take them down weeks before Christmas. Even Greg, who had initially questioned Alex's motives, admitted that Karen had once threatened to report him to the HOA board over a minor landscaping issue. As the stories poured out, the mood shifted from skepticism to solidarity. What had begun as isolated incidents now appeared as part of a larger pattern, one that couldn't be ignored any longer. By the end of the evening, most attendees agreed that Karen's behavior was unacceptable and needed to be addressed formally. The meeting. Next day, armed with renewed confidence and overwhelming support from their neighbors, Alex submitted a formal complaint to the police department. Alongside the security footage, they included copies of the timeline they'd compiled, detailing every interaction with Karen leading up to the vandalism. They also attached statements from several neighbors willing to testify about her past behavior. Within days, the investigation intensified. Police officers visited Karen's home, serving her with a summons to appear for questioning. When she arrived at the station, flanked by her lawyer, Karen initially denied everything. According to her, the footage was fake, a fabrication designed to tarnish her reputation. She claimed Alex had edited the video using special effects software and accused them of orchestrating the entire incident to ruin her standing in the community. But the officers weren't swayed. Forensic experts analyzed the footage frame by frame, verifying its authenticity through metadata embedded in the file. The timestamp matched the exact date and time of the vandalism, and the location data confirmed it had been recorded from Alex's property. Additionally, the license plate visible in the video corresponded to Karen's registered vehicle, leaving no room for doubt. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Karen's lawyer advised her to cooperate. Still, she clung to denial, insisting she must have been mistaken or misidentified. It wasn't until investigators presented additional testimonies from neighbors corroborating Alex's account that Karen finally broke down. In a tearful confession, she admitted to throwing the rock but attempted to justify her actions by claiming stress and frustration. "I just wanted them to follow the rules," she sobbed during the interrogation. "Everyone else listens, but Alex kept pushing boundaries. I thought if I showed them the consequences, they'd understand." Her admission shocked even those closest to her. Friends who had once defended Karen found themselves grappling with guilt, realizing they had enabled her toxic behavior by staying silent. Meanwhile, Alex felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that the truth had finally come out, and sadness that someone could become so consumed by control that they resorted to destruction. With Karen's confession on record, the legal process moved swiftly. She was fined heavily for criminal mischief and placed on probation, with strict orders to avoid contact with Alex or anyone else involved in the case. More significantly, she was stripped of her position within the HOA, effectively ending her reign of terror. News of her downfall spread quickly throughout the neighborhood, sparking conversations about accountability and civility. For the first time in years, residents felt empowered to speak openly about their experiences without fear of retaliation. Slowly but surely, the toxic atmosphere Karen had cultivated began to lift, replaced by a newfound sense of unity and trust. For Alex, the ordeal served as a turning point, not just in their relationship with the neighborhood but also in their own life. They realized that standing up against injustice required courage and resilience, but it also brought unexpected rewards. Friendships strengthened, boundaries clarified, and a renewed appreciation for the power of community. As they sat on their porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Alex allowed themselves a rare moment of peace. The shattered window had been repaired, the garden was thriving, and the neighborhood felt lighter, freer. Life wasn't perfect, but for the first time in months it felt hopeful.